Hello third grade. So we are going to be still working with reading our realistic fiction. Yesterday we did a little video to introduce it again, and today we're just going to be practicing reading it through and then answering the questions. So we'll do this today and tomorrow, so that means reading homework is going to be a little longer, but yesterday we didn't have reading homework, since the next 2 days it'll be a little longer, and this time it's just going to be the text. We're not going to have illustrations or pictures to go along with it. So let's get started. So this is our homework. It is N.1, so we're reading realistic fiction, and then we're going to answer questions about it. So as we can see, our passages are going to be a little longer. So let's start here. We're going to read it through and then answer the questions. And our first question is, based on paragraph 1, why is Stella in the vegetable garden? So we're going to start here. Stella was spending her first morning of summer vacation in the vegetable garden pulling weeds. She had plans to hang out with her friends Maya and Jin-So later, but her dad always told her, work first, then fun. She pulled up the last weed and wiped sweat from her eyes. So, based on paragraph 1, why is Stella in her vegetable garden? Gardening is her favorite way to spend summer vacation. No, she said it wasn't her favorite. She never said that. She was doing it because she had to pull weeds, and her dad told her, work first and then fun. She has to help out at home before she can spend time with friends. That sounds like a good answer, because when she's done working, then she gets to hang out with her friends. But remember, we want to check all of our answers before we just pick one. She wants the garden to look pretty when her friends arrived. That was never said. Her parents are punishing her for spending too much time with her friends. She never said it was a punishment. Remember, she said when she helps, then she gets to see her friends. So we're going to go with this one. But let's read the rest as well before we answer our question. Let's just read the rest of our story. As Stella dusted off her hands, she heard her phone chime. That meant Maya and Jin-So were here to pick her up. Perfect timing, she thought. After a morning of hard work, she was ready to relax by the Cove with her friends. The Cove was a small hidden beach on the shore of a nearby lake. At the Cove, the girls noticed something strange. The sand was crisscrossed with tire tracks, as though someone had been riding a motorcycle around on the beach. Let's see where these lead, Stella suggested. The three friends followed the tracks to a dirt trail on the far side of the Cove. The trail led up to a grassy hill where a house stood overlooking the lake. Do you think the person who owns the motorcycle lives in that house? Jin-So said. Stella laughed and shook her head. That's Mr. Norton's house. Whenever she saw Mr. Norton, he was either sipping tea on his porch or puttering around the yard looking at bird feeders. It looks like nobody's home, I observed. I bet Mr. Norton is on vacation. The friends looked at each other and then looked back at the tracks. Uh-oh, Stella exclaimed. The tracks go right up to his house. If he's not home, he probably doesn't even know about this. Someone is riding around there without his permission, Jin-So said. On the walk back to the Cove, they tried to decide what to do. Maya wanted to check whether Mr. Norton was home, but Jin-So thought they should alert the police. Stella tried to calm them down, since she wanted to stay at the Cove and swim. All we saw were some tire tracks, she reminded them. It's not exactly a dire situation. Just then, when they heard an engine growl above them, they looked toward the hill and saw a man on a motorcycle. The biker paused, then flew down the trail, kicking up clouds of dust. What do we do now? Maya asked with a shaky voice. The biker rode toward the three girls. Maya and Jin-So looked at each other nervously. The biker took off his helmet and uncovered a wrinkly face and gray hair. Mr. Norton? Stella stared at the quiet man she knew, now sporting a leather jacket and playful grin. Howdy, Mr. Norton replied. My grandson got me this bike for my birthday. Ain't it something? So we read it all. We have our answer. So now let's submit. And we have 3 more questions. So now we're reviewing paragraph 4 and 5. Let's read our question first. What is the most likely reason why the author mentions that Mr. Norton sips tea on his porch and looks at bird feeders? Let's look at our options. To show why there would be tire tracks near Mr. Norton's house. To show why the girls like to swim at the Cove near the hill. to suggest that Stella visits Mr. Norton every summer, to suggest that Mr. Norton is unlikely to own a motorcycle. Now let's go back and read paragraph 4 and 5. The three friends followed the tracks to a dirt trail on the far side of the cove. The trail led up to a grassy hill, where a house stood overlooking the lake. Do you think the person who owns the motorcycle lives in that house? Said Jinso. Stella laughed and shook her head. That's Mr. Norton's house. Whenever she saw Mr. Norton, he was either sipping tea on his porch or puttering around the yard looking at bird feeders. So now, why would they mention this? To show why there would be tire tracks near Mr. Norton's house? Well, she didn't say that to say, yes, that's why there's tire tracks there, because he sips tea and looks at bird feeders. That doesn't make too much sense. To show why the girls like to swim at the cove near the hill? Well, with Mr. Norton sipping tea and looking at bird feeders, that has nothing to do with the girls liking to swim, so that wouldn't make sense. To suggest that Stella visits Mr. Norton every summer? Well, we never said anything about her visiting, so no. To suggest that Mr. Norton is unlikely to own a motorcycle. Yeah, that would make the most sense, because they're saying he sips tea and looks at bird feeders. That doesn't sound like someone who would own a motorcycle. So we're going to go with this one. All right, so now we went through all of our answers and our questions. So now we're working on, look at the bold word in paragraph 10. So here's paragraph 10, but first let's read the question and look at our options. How does Stella probably feel about the motorcycle tracks? Use context clues to help you figure out the meaning of the word dire. She thinks the tracks are not really a big deal. She thinks the tracks might lead toward danger. She is interested to know who is on Mr. Norton's land. She believes that someone made the tracks as a joke. So let's see. Stella tried to calm them down since she wanted to stay at the cove and swim. All we saw were some tire tracks, she reminded them. It's not exactly a dire situation. So she's trying to calm them down so they can go swimming. So she's kind of making it seem like it's not a big deal. It's not screaming, call the police, because nothing has happened. So I would say she thinks the tracks are not a really big deal. That would make the most sense to me. She thinks the tracks might lead toward danger. No, because she's saying we can calm down and we can go swimming. She is interested to know who is on Mr. Norton's land. Not really, because remember, she wanted to calm down and stay at the cove. She believed that someone made the tracks as a joke. When she never said anything about a joke, she said, let's just calm down and it's not a big deal. So I would go with this one. And so we read the question, went through the answers, read the paragraph, and then talked through each answer to help us find the right one. All right, so now we have our last one. So we're reviewing paragraphs 14 and 15, but let's read our question and all our answers first. What does Stella probably feel when she finds out who is riding the motorcycle? She is proud that she was right about Mr. Norton all along. She is surprised that Mr. Norton likes motorcycles. She is tired of worrying about the motorcycle and wants to swim. She is afraid that Mr. Norton will get hurt on the motorcycle. So let's see. Mr. Norton, Stella stared at the quiet man she knew, now sporting a leather jacket and a playful grin. Howdy, Mr. Norton replied. My grandson got me this bike for my birthday. Ain't it something? So, let's see. Is she proud that she was right about Mr. Norton all along? Well, she doesn't really seem proud. She kind of questioned it. So, maybe, but not confident. So, let's see. She is surprised that Mr. Norton likes motorcycles. Well, she did seem a little surprised. The question mark kind of makes it be like, Mr. Norton? Like, that surprised me. I wasn't expecting that. So I feel a little better about that answer. She is tired of worrying about the motorcycle and wants to swim. She never said anything about wanting to go back to swim, so I don't think that would be her answer at all. She's afraid that Mr. Norton will get hurt on the motorcycle. She never expressed that she was afraid. She just stared at the quiet man. Oops. Sorry. So I'm going to go with she is surprised that Mr. Norton likes motorcycles. And let's see. All right, that is it. So that is going to be our homework for today, just reading realistic fiction. Remember to take your time, look through each answer, read the story all the way through, and then we're going to look back and answer questions about it. All right, have fun, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye, third grade.